Believe me, you have to hit harder.
Thank y'all. May I have your attention, please? I'd like to call our meeting to order. This is the Jackson County Board of Supervisors, August the 21st, 2023 board meeting. We will open with a prayer. District 4.
Heavenly Father, we ask for your guidance and wisdom. We thank you for giving us the abilities to come here today and make decisions for our county. We ask that we make the best decisions and the right decisions in your eyes. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move to item number 4, amendments to the agenda. Mr. Cumbest?
I don't have any.
Mr. Morris?
I don't have any.
I have one. I would like to add a executive session item, Singing River Health System, sale thereof. Mr. Ross?
None.
Mr. Bosarge?
None.
Mr. Eldridge?
None.
Mr. Fulton?
I have one. I have a letter written to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History to enter some public comments on the record about the Old Wade School. On consent, please.
To consent, okay. Mr. O'Neill?
None.
Mr. Calmer?
None.
Are there any others that would have an amendment to the agenda? If not, we need an order approving the amendments to the agenda. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cumbest,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Morris. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, we have a tax protest appeal hearing scheduled for 9 o'clock. Yes, sir, Mr. Nick.
Mr. Taylor, the Cable One withdrew their appeal, so all I guess we need is a motion to uphold the current value, $501,288.
Motion by Mr. Cumbest. Need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bosarge. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll move now to item number 6, general public comments. Is there anyone here that would like to address the board and the public?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Tom Hardy. I'm with FEMA Intergovernmental Affairs, which is a fancy way of saying I'm a liaison to the Board of Supervisors and to the Mayor of Moss Point and other senior elected officials, Mr. Floyd. I will be working in this county and also in Jasper County. I'll be in Jasper tomorrow, but I'll be back this way on Wednesday. I'll be splitting my time. So as a liaison, I'm not an operational person, but if there are issues that you have with FEMA programs, or if there's something you don't understand about how survivors go through the process to register and get some help, that I'm the person you can turn to, and I will help you to clear those up. So I just wanted to introduce myself. Even though I was born in Mobile, I'm familiar with Mississippi history, as my family, the Hardy family in the late 1800s, was prominent in Hattiesburg and down this way in Gulfport. So if you need something from me, you all have a card, and I'll be meeting with Mr. Morris later today. Anyone have a question at this time?
Questions? We certainly welcome you. If I saw the news correctly, y'all are set up and in operation now, correct?
Yes, the Disaster Recovery Center is over in Moss Point at the City Hall, and I'll be heading over there now to talk to Mayor Knight and visit the DRC, as it's called, make sure things are working fine. you can always go over there and visit. It wouldn't be in the way. You can see how the program works, where people can come in and sit down and go over their application or make an application. But a lot of times, people get a letter and they don't really understand it. And if they go to the Disaster Recovery Center, our folks there, state folks and others, Small Business Administration can sit down with them and go over their whole package, make sure they've got everything right. The important thing is that even though you may need support from FEMA, in your application, there is a Small Business Administration application for a loan. And folks will right away say, I can't take a loan, I need help. That loan application doesn't mean you're going to take a loan or want a loan or get a loan. It's only a way of determining where you are in this process. It's not based on your income, it's based on your need. So you may see that people will say, I'm not filling that out. They have to fill it out in order for the process to continue. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your help from District 2, Moss Point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have an idea of what the interest rate is?
Excuse me?
Do you have an idea what the interest rate on that loan
All
would
I
be?
can say at this point, it's very low. I will be providing that information as soon as I can contact the locals, well, not local here, but from our office, the Small Business Administration person that will be working in the county. And it's quite possible that we'll come back together once I can determine who that is and meet up with them. But we're just hitting the ground. I just got here yesterday, so I'm still trying to settle in.
Right, okay. Let me ask one more.
As soon as I know that, I'll let you know.
Yeah, appreciate it. One more question.
Yes, sir.
Transitioning from MEMA to FEMA, will that be happening?
No, sir. FEMA is, we're here to support MEMA. We're not taking over. We're just a few things that we do that can support what Mississippi Emergency Management does, but they're your main contact.
Okay, okay.
Okay. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go now to, oh, I'm sorry, any other? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Hello again.
Hello.
I heard so much going on since I was here. I wasn't going to come back, but, I'm sorry. I'm Judith Peebles. I'm from Ocean Springs. I heard so much going on that I just felt I had to come back. I heard so much in 2 meetings ago about, you're the attorney, right? Yeah, about your final resolve on the ditch and the bridge in Gulf Park Estates. I mean, the road and the bridge in Gulf Park Estates that was being thrown at Randy constantly. I'm going to take a long story, make it short. I've seen Connie Moran, I've seen Shay Dobson, I've seen Kenny Holloway, I've seen Randy, I've seen John McKay, and I've seen Ken Papania. I own my property in Ocean Springs, and I was told by everybody, it is private property. My subdivision, my part of the subdivision was left out of the utility drainage, the drainage ditch. We have none. So after a period of years, the water started building up on all of our properties. It was a joke that I lived on Lake Hargrove because the minute it rained, you could float a skiff on my backyard and the water was right up to my doorway. All right, I didn't come and bellyache to any of y'all. Randy came out, he did his due diligence, and he said, Miss Judy, I wish I could help you, but I can't. I spent $10,500 on my property, putting in my drainage system and a sump pump to move my water from my yard to the curb. I also had my house piered in fear of what was going to happen, that it would collapse with all the water on it. I didn't ask anyone for a dime. I am and have been a single mother, a single parent raising 2 daughters, and I went to raising 3 grandchildren. I didn't come beg anything. I paid it, got it done. My next door neighbor came over and said, "How are you getting the water to the street?" I said, "You see that big black thing that looks like a garbage can cover there?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "It's a sump pump." So now we've got sump pumps in our subdivision. Many people don't want to do it. It's a pain in the butt. You have it ups your electricity bill, you have maintenance on it, and I just had to replace my sump pump because it had a surge and it's gone. I think people need to realize that when you own something and it's yours, you're responsible for it. The cities and the county cannot step in and take over on private property. I wanted to put that out there because there is a new page on Facebook that I was privy to seeing that a new group has formed, and all they're going to do is post complaints and come up with complaints against Mr. Bosarge for drainage. I think those people, and if they're watching this, these people need to find out what the law is before they start attacking any of the supervisors, because it could happen to you, Mr. Cumbas, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Morris, Ms. Ross, any of them, and especially you, Ross, because, Troy, because you're my supervisor, and I know the history of that property out there is horrific. The only person who actually tried to step forward and help all of us was to cut a drainage ditch in the back, and everyone had to give up 6 feet of their property. I said, take 10, I don't care. Just get the water off my property. Well, in the meantime, you have people who built permanent fixtures, sheds, garages on the back part of their property. They're not even 6 foot off the property line. So what do? They're not going to buy the garage. We were all told they'll take the fences down, but we have to put them back up. So we got caught right in the middle. It couldn't be done. So there went my money into the ground to pump water out. But I really think everyone needs to look into the law before they attack this board, because any of y'all could have drainage issues. And as I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, the person in the county area, Bell Park Estates, St. Andrews, all that, that takes care of the drainage ditches is the land manager, is that correct?
Road manager.
Huh?
Road manager.
Road manager? Hi. And they need to call him instead of wasting y'all's time. There's a simple solution to me. Call him, he'll get it done, and everyone's happy. I have another drainage issue in Ocean Springs by the cemetery, and still it hasn't been resolved. Every time it rains, a bad rain, my grandchild, who died 19 days before they were 1 year old, his grave goes underwater. You can see it this much on the tombstone. Breaks my heart. I go out there and I try and clean his headstone off. And I wonder one day when he's going to pop up out of the ground. No one seems to care. And I don't have a road manager to call. But I still complain, and Mr. Ken listens, and he does what he can do. I'm not talking about you, Mr. Ken Papania. He does what he can do. So, for everyone out there, if you've got drainage problems, we're responsible for them. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a peaceful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we had some people come in while Judith was speaking. We're in the general public comments section of the agenda. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board or the public in general? If not, we'll move on. We'll go to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. We need an order approving the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ross, was that Mr. Ross? That was Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Cumbas. Consent agenda number 1. Any discussion, further discussion? If not, All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Go to item number 8, which is the consent agenda number 2. And we'll note that Mr. Ross is leaving the meeting. We need a motion. I will make the motion. We need a second, seconded by Mr. Morris. Is there any discussion on the second consent agenda? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Supervisor Ross is returning to the meeting. We'll now go to item number 9, department heads. Mr. Eldridge.
Yes, I have the order for the Board of Supervisors for real and personal property assessment rolls.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cumbus. Seconded by Mr. Bosarge. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Wells, we'll go to finance. Ms. Wells.
Good morning. The only item I have is the order approving the claims docket.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Morris and a second by Mr. Bosarge. Is there any discussion on the claims docket? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10 is scheduled for 10 o'clock, so we will move to item number 11. We have a presentation on our mid-year workers' comp review. Mr. Dalton, come share some good news with us.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I think it will be good news. I was in and out in July. I know y'all have been in and out of budgeting, so I kind of left you alone with the election season. So, these are just going to be our mid-year numbers. Okay, so this is through June 30th, not through July the 31st. Just kind of want to give you, an update each year, where we've been, where we are now, and where I think we're headed. Okay. So I'll try to keep this brief. So what we have is you just have two columns, number of claims by year, and then the claims payment. So you can see in 2019 we had a good year. We had about 37 claims. We had about 88,000 in total dollars paid out by the insurance company. Now, I think everybody's been here through the rough years except for maybe Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris, our high year of claims was probably $1.5 million in claims in 2017. Okay, so we really started getting a handle on it in 18, 19. We're starting to see the fruits of our labor. 2020, we had less claims at 25, but we had $265,000 worth of claim payments. But if you look at my notes down there, that year we had 3 claims that represented $230,000 of the $265,000. Okay. The key when I went and analyzed them is they came from 3 different departments, and there were really nothing that could have been done to use risk management loss prevention on those claims. Okay, so that's what drove that year. 2021, we had a great year. 23 claims, numbers were down. Total claim payments were $33,000. Remember, we harkened back to 2017. We were at 1.5 million. We did 33,000 in claims that year. 2022, claim numbers are still down. And remember, we got full reporting of claims probably back in 2019. We started making sure everything was reported. So we have a lot of report-only claims. It could be something, but we don't think it's going to be anything. We want to get it in the insurance company's hands. We had 16 claims. We had $219,000 worth of claim payments. Of that $219,000, Mr. Bosarge, $152,000 was a single largest claim, was an auto wreck that was not our fault, that the $152,000 was paid out, and our insurance company is going to do. So they're going to subrogate against the at-fault party. Okay? So really, we had a good year there. This year, we're at 33 claims. We ticked up a little bit mid-year, but we're at $62,000 in claim payments. Okay? So I think it's just a matter of we've created a culture of safety here, and it starts with y'all, all the department heads, Human Resources Department, and I just want to thank you for that because it makes it a lot easier out here. I've spoken with Mississippi Public Entity, who is our work comp carrier. She's not seeing any rate increases. I have a feeling that we might even see better numbers than we had last year. What other notes? Just another where we've been and where we are. I kind of went back and looked at my notes. 2019, we had payrolls of $32 million for the entire county. We paid $1.2 million in work comp premiums. This current year we're in, we're at $38 million in payroll, and our premiums are $810,000. So we're down about $410,000 in premiums. So what that means is payrolls are up 20%, which is what drives work comp cost, and premiums are down about 33% over what they were, okay? I don't see them going up. I don't know how much more we can squeeze out of the turnip, so to speak, dollar savings-wise. On the loss prevention, we're still on an as-needed basis. If we were having a ton of car accidents out of one department, we could really focus on that, right? So we're just, for an operation of, what it was, 750, 800 employees, to have 33 claims in a year is pretty good, and when a lot of them are just report only, okay? So great job. Thanks for supporting me and our loss prevention. On the loss prevention front, I hired a new loss prevention guy. He's new to me, but he's not new to municipalities, okay? He's worked with municipalities for about 15, 20 years on loss prevention, so he knows what he's doing, okay? I think that's it. Any questions for me?
What's our experience rating down to? We got under 1.0.
I think we're down in the 0.8s or 0.7s.
Oh, yeah,
Now you got to remember that's because MPE is a self-insured fund. They don't report to NCCI, so she can kind of promulgate the experience mod she wants, which allows her to give some really deep credits, which is what's keeping us down where we are. So hopefully we can absorb the payroll increases for this next budget year without any premium increase or maybe even a premium decrease. Okay?
In 2018, we were what?
1.2 million in premium. We're at 810 last year. And I think we got a pretty good handle on the overtime that was driving we'd have a large audit every once in a while. I think we got a pretty good handle around that so that we're not leaving a whole bunch of money with MPE for the year and then getting it back on an audit or sending a lot because we missed it low on the other side. Okay, we're never going to be spot on, but if we can minimize the audit swing one way or the other, then that's good because it helps on the budgeting side of the house. All right?
Todd, I got a question.
Sure.
Workers' comp doesn't come through my office.
Sure.
Do we still have a $250,000 self-insured retention?
No, this is first dollar.
Okay.
This is
yeah,
first,
that,
yes,
that,
this is
that was,
first
that was
dollar.
a while back, I guess.
That's right. You're,
yeah. Of these numbers in the right-hand column, how much of that have we recovered or do we expect to recover through subrogation? I know there are a lot of different.
Really, the only one, that's a great question, Mr. Coleman. The only one that I saw when I analyzed the loss runs is the one, and I don't really know, I don't know what department the gentleman was in. Mr. O'Neill, I don't know if he might have gotten hit by a car, maybe. The details were a little sketchy, but it had to do with an auto. It wasn't our fault. That was the only one I saw. And they won't get into the subrogation process until that's closed. That claim grew from, don't hold me to this, but somewhere in 90-something thousand at this time last year, okay, up to 152. So they're still paying on this. So the gentleman is still injured, okay. But once that closes, then we'll be going back dollar for dollar on the person that hit us and did the damage. Okay, so that'll knock that, you'll see that number come back down once we get the subrogation dollars back in the house. Okay, could take a couple of years. A great question, but yes, this is first dollar. It's not like our other side of the house.
Yeah, the only one I've ever
with
seen
the auto
is the-
liabilities and, yeah.
The only policy I've ever seen was going back a number of years, 250. That's all.
Yeah, this is first dollar. Nothing comes out of the county's pocket on this. Okay?
Any other comments or questions?
Thank y'all for your time.
I can remember back in 2016 when workers' comp was a serious issue, and I congratulate you, Todd, for kind of leading us in the right direction. Loss prevention, let's have meetings in every department. I think you led us, but I think we did a good job of following. HR, all the department heads, Mr. Fulton, every elected official that has a department, if you will, they're kind of independent. And we have adopted a culture of safety, and it saves money, and it saves injury, and even could save lives. So I sincerely thank you for the work that you've done for the county.
Oh, thank you, and it's been a pleasure. It's good to deliver good news, right? And I know Mr. Harris is looking down because he was always a proponent of safety as well.
Yes.
When he was here with us. So if you need anything, let me know. We're just going to keep working. We're here to support and not get in your way, all right? But thank you for your support, especially on the safety culture.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all have a great day.
Okay, we'll move to item number 12, our action items. The first one is state delegation.
I don't have anything on state delegation today. I have a brief something on federal delegation, though. Just wanted to let the board know we are going to have a visit from some congressional staff members next week on the 30th, and they're going to come and look at our airport and look at the earmark project that we've got there for the North Apron, and just see the new operations that we have going on at the airport. And following that, they'll be in our office and meeting with Matthew and I and others about resiliency and our efforts on resiliency and flood mitigation, as well as talking about the flood risk rating 2.0 insurance issue. And wanted y'all to know about that. If you want to come meet with them, they'll be in our office mid-morning and all the way up until lunchtime next week. And so that's what we're doing.
Good. Okay, good report. That's good news. What day are they coming?
On the 30th. I think that's a Thursday, maybe Wednesday.
Okay, super. Okay.
Wednesday.
Anything else there?
That's it.
Let's move to item 13, supervisors items. District 1, Mr. Cumbest.
Yes, I have a resolution reappointing John Bowen to the Helena Utility District. I'll make that motion.
Mr. Cumbest made the motion. I will second it. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Mr. Morris, do you have any items?
I don't have anything.
I have none. Mr. Ross?
None.
Mr. Bosarge? Okay, it is just about 9:29. Can we do an executive session in 30 minutes? If the answer is yes, I say let's do it.
We'll go back there.
Okay, yeah. People don't get up and leave. We will excuse ourselves. We need a motion to go into closed session to determine if we have a need for an executive session. Mr. Cumbest made the motion. Mr. Morris seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carries. We are in closed session. Let's go to the rear.
The board is now in executive session to discuss two items. One is related to personnel. The second item is related to the Singing River Hospital System.
all back in regular session. We ready?
Yeah, Joey needs to make the announcement.
There was no action taken in executive session.
Okey-doke. So we now go back to item number 10, planning appeals, the Oaks subdivision.
Yes, sir.
Yep, go.
Good morning. On May the 17th, the Planning Commission heard the application for sketch plat approval for the Oaks. It's a private gated subdivision being developed into a 9 single-family lot development by Kent Higdon. He's the owner, and Donovan Scruggs is his agent. With variances to the main road and the gate entrance regulations. To allow the street to be private with easement access also. The property is zoned R1, located at 9801, 9807 Pointe-aux-Chenes Road. The subdivision was fully allowed by right and exceeded all the requirements for the Zone 1 district. The only thing that would be possibly could be appealed would be the gate and the road width on this subdivision. Everything else met all the requirements. The Planning Commission voted to approve sketch plat with a 5-to-1 vote, with 1 abstaining. The application was appealed by the Pointe-aux-Chenes Neighborhood Association, I'm assuming, and I think they're here to represent this application. But you know, we've discussed this, and you know, sketch plat is something that we allow Planning Commission to approve by courtesy, but it's really something that can be approved in-house by our regulations. So we really didn't have to go through this process for sketch plat. The only 2 issues that are even appealable would be the road width and allowing a gate for this gated subdivision for it to be private. Everything else is allowed by right and fully meets all the requirements.
Yeah. Mr. Taylor, if I may, for a minute, I have, in preparing for this meeting starting last week, in the absence of April, who was on vacation, I kind of started looking at this, and I met with Marcus to discuss it, and for a number of reasons that I'll walk through very quickly, I do not believe that the board needs to or should take any action on this appeal at this time, and here's my reasoning. Marcus was right. This was a sketch plat approval, and in looking at the Jackson County subdivision regulations with regard to sketch plats, I don't see anything in there that requires Planning Commission approval. I do agree that that's something that can be done by Marcus and his staff as far as approving the sketch plat. The next step would be the preliminary plat and then the final plat. This is going to come back before this board at some point for approval. But I think right now we're probably a little bit premature, even though there has been an appeal filed. I don't think we're at a stage where we need to address any issues. A lot of the issues in the appeal are not appealable issues, or they're issues that don't involve the county, don't involve the Planning Commission. Marcus is correct that this is zoned R1, so by right, he has the right to develop this property as he has contemplated doing. With regard to the variances, there is a variance for a narrower road that would end up being a private road and a gate to this private subdivision. The variances do have to be approved at some point by the Board of Supervisors. The Planning Commission did vote to approve the sketch plat and approve the variances I would prefer that everything be done at once. In other words, at the preliminary plat level, when the Planning Commission votes to approve that, then at some point it's going to come to this board, and there can be an appeal taken at that point. I don't want to piecemeal this. I just think at this point we're not, as we would say in the legal world, it's not ripe for appeal, or it's interlocutory nature. Or in other words, it hasn't been a final determination. I don't want to piecemeal it. So that's ultimately my suggestion to this board as far as this appeal is we don't approve it or deny it. We just don't take any action at this point, and it's going to come back before this board. Correct, Marcus?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Sketch plat is just the rough draft. Preliminary plat is actually when the board should take action. Okay. Now, I mean, you're welcome to hear the complaints for the neighbors, you know, and I think you should, but I don't think that this is the point, you know, to take any action on this.
When do you think the preliminary plat would be presented?
I would think pretty soon. You know, like I said, this is the rough draft. We actually could approve it in-house in our department. As a courtesy, we always go through the Planning Commission process. That's just the way it's always been done. But based on our regulations, we really don't have to do that. We really can do it in-house. And then, you know, the variances would, you know, you would go into that sketch plat and actually be approved during the preliminary plat process. And that's the only two things that, you know, could even be looked at on this, because everything else is allowed by right. You've got a narrow road, which is a 14-foot roadway, and then, you know, they're asking for a gated private subdivision. The road manager, we spoke to him, he's completely fine with that because he don't have to do any maintenance on it. You know, their homeowners association will take fully control of all the drainage, everything to do with it. So it's, you know, it's not going to hurt the county whatsoever. So that's the only thing that would be appealable would be the road size and the gate. But like Mr. Calmer said, I really don't think this is the point to take action on that.
Okay.
And I do understand, Mr. Taylor, that in discussing with Marcus in the past, I guess the Planning Commission has voted on sketch plats. I just don't think that's a necessary step, and maybe we discuss with April and say maybe we don't need to take any action in the future on sketch plats because it's not required. It's a sketch.
Right.
Okay. Well, are we in a hearing right now?
I think we're in a hearing, and I think if you want to hear from the objectors, you can. But ultimately, my recommendation is that we just don't take any action. We enter an order not taking any action, or have a motion and a second not to take action.
Okay.
On this appeal.
Okay.
Or maybe just to go ahead and proceed with the next step, which would be preliminary plat.
Yeah. My concern was we do have people here. Are there people here for this?
Against it.
No, these are
There are people
the neighborhood
for
association
and people against. So,
representing.
you know, as a courtesy to them,
We need to hear from
I think we need to hear from them.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, shall we hear from people who are for?
No, they're here to represent the application for appeal.
Okay.
So you need to hear from them first.
Okay, so anyone who, please come forward, sign in, and tell us why you do not like this effort.
Good morning. My name is Barrett Downing Rice. I am one of the owners of 9825 Pointe-a-Shan Road. I filed the appeal on behalf of 14 families who live west of Seashore Avenue down there, all of which are on homes or plots that are greater than 3 acres, because that was the covenant that ran through this property. I understand what you're saying, that perhaps this is premature at this point and we should wait for the preliminary plat application. I am concerned, however, because we did not get notice the last time. We actually got no notice that this was happening or that a planned subdivision was going into, you know, our neighborhood. And as a result, when we came to object to it, we had like a day. I was not able to prepare anything for the record. So I would ask, there were 10 exhibits that were attached to my appeal that they would not accept in the Planning Commission office because they weren't a part of the record before the Planning Commission. Can we make those a part of the record here? And then going forward, we'll have them to refer to? Is that all right? Yeah. Okay. I don't know who I give them to. I have copies for everybody if anybody wants them. And just briefly, we oppose this subdivision because it is not consistent in any way with the property on Pointe-aux-Chenes Road, west of Seashore Avenue. There was, as I said, a covenant that ran through all of that property that no one could subdivide into less than 3 acres. Doing a title search on this, we see that a covenant still does run through one of the 2 parcels that Mr. Higdon wishes to subdivide, and I can also make that a part of the record. The other lot that does not have the covenant on it is the one that has all the historical significance. This was the original Ramsey property. The Ramseys are buried on an Indian mound, which is on the property. We have notified the State of Mississippi Department of Historical and Archaeological Significance, and they have said that once he applies for permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers, it will then come to their attention, and they will be able to say whether or not they approve it or not, or whether they oppose the development. The level home Dune Gate, as I understand it, is on the National Register of Historic Homes. The live oaks on the property are registered, National Register of Live Oaks. I believe there are camellias on the property that were, I think specifically, groomed by Mrs. Level and have some significance historically and within the state of Mississippi. Lastly, I think in doing the title search on this, what we realized was that the reason this subdivision is being proposed is because the property is highly leveraged, and it is the only way, I think, for Mr. Higdon to get out of it. I don't think that we as a neighborhood should have to suffer the consequences of his bad business decisions. We have a tremendous amount of sympathy for him, but this neighborhood has always been and should always be, I think, the way that it is, which is basically historic and wide expanses of land and nature. I do think I want to ask Alan Weaver to speak a little bit to the permitting of the seawall that's on one of the pieces of the property, if you don't mind, Alan. It's another reason that we've objected.
Good morning. My name's Alan Weaver, currently residing at 9809 Pointe-aux-Chenes Road, immediately next door to Higdon. And what we have out there, his seawall, and if you look at his site plan that he submitted, is obviously sticking out beyond the mean high tide line. Now, as an immediate adjacent neighbor, there were no notices sent out from the Army Corps of Engineers. We've done our peer work, neighbors have done peer work. We can't even sink a single piling without the Army Corps showing up, letters being sent out. So the seawall has been built. As far as we know, I think Barry reached out to the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have yet to been able to produce a permit, haven't found one. In addition to that, there were 2 ponds that were dug on the property that are within 5 feet of the property line with no variance, no permitting as far as we know. Impact to the wetlands, again, no Army Corps of Engineers did not come out. State DEQ, haven't heard from them. So we're potentially dealing with a lot of unpermitted things. Again, with the house, there's been people out there doing work on the house, and as far as we know, there hasn't been any permitting there on the old historical house there on the registry. So we just ask that you guys take a good hard look at this property and what's being impacted before making a decision. Thank you.
Okay, with all due respect, everything that the neighbors just mentioned has nothing to do with the subdivision process, unfortunately. This property, like I said, is well over the required size for an R1 property. And the notices that they keep mentioning, notices are not required for a by right subdivision, so we don't have to send out notices.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, I think following up with what Marcus has said, that the complaints, which I hear and which I understand, would be if, for an example, damaging wetlands, that's going to be another agency. This board, my only job is to make sure that this board help them and help Marcus make sure that we do what's within our legal control correctly. And if something's being done that is improper, that's the subject of another agency, then you would hope that agency would respond. So some of the things that, while I understand, it's just not within this board's control over some of these complaints, even though I certainly understand what you're saying.
Well, who should get in touch with the Corps of Engineers or DMR or the appropriate, I'll call it federal agency, to get permitted in this process? Because you can go ahead and do it and then be in the position of begging forgiveness.
No, sir, that's the developer's responsibility. Our responsibility is to make sure that he develops this subdivision within the parameters of our ordinance, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Right, if this board permitted well, not permitted because this board wouldn't take any action, but if somebody was building a house in a permitted R1 area and they were destroying wetlands, then they're going to do that at their own peril of enforcement from another agency. So as Marcus said, we've got our own set of regulations on what is okay to do and what is not okay to do. And that's really all that's before this board. But it is, I agree, it is the developer's responsibility to follow any other regulations, state or federal, that may be raised by the objectors.
Okay.
I would imagine that if Archives and History got a hold of some of this, that they would have an interest and would pursue something like this, would be my guess. Yeah, and the dealings that we've had with Archives and History is they seem very interested in anything that's on the historic register, anything that's of significance.
Yeah, during the Planning Commission meeting, we actually recommended that they reach out to them. So.
Okay, when the next sketch plat approval is required,
preliminary plat.
what are you going to, no, not on this one, just the next one that's in line 6 months from now, what are y'all going to do differently that will not be appealed? And I think I've heard you don't have to do anything. Are you going to have a meeting?
Yes, sir.
To discuss this?
The next process will be preliminary plat at some point.
I mean, the next development that is in someone's brain right now, and it will evolve into a sketch plat.
A new development outside of this one?
A brand new one, has nothing to do with this one. What are y'all going to do? You're just going to move forward? You're going to have a planning meeting, planning department
Normally we
hearing?
do. Normally we do. We can do that in-house and not go through the planning commission process. I don't think it hurts either way. Like Mr. Calmer said, it's just not the point for the board to make a decision. Now, preliminary plat, that would be a point for the board to make a decision. But this one that we're talking about, the only thing that the board could even hear would be the road size and the gate requirement. Everything else is allowed by right. It's not appealable. All the issues that the neighbors have on this project are really with other agencies. I mean, because he fully exceeds R1 requirements, which is 9,600 square foot lots. These lots are 1 acre and over, so he's well beyond the requirements of this subdivision. You know, he's meeting all the requirements of our ordinance. They mentioned, you know, covenants. We don't recognize covenants. That's a private agreement between homeowners. So he's doing everything that we need him to do on this this development here.
Okay, I still.
I don't know if that's answering your question.
I still don't have an answer. What, the next sketch permit that y'all look at, what is going to stop someone from appealing it?
My recommendation would be for Marcus and April and myself to sit down. My recommendation would be for Marcus and his staff to approve that at the staff level, or maybe present it to the Planning Commission with no vote, just as an informational type item. I think that may be the better course of action. I haven't been around as long as some, and this may be the first time that we've had an appeal from a sketch plat approval. Is kind of the feeling that I get. But I think going forward, Mr. Taylor, it'd be better maybe for Marcus to approve the sketch plat. I mean, even I kind of laughed a little bit. Even in the subdivision regulations, it said the sketch plat can be done in pencil, which is kind of an indication how preliminary it is, and maybe just again bring it to the Planning Commission if you so choose, kind of as an informational FYI item, not to be voted on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
This one just generated maybe more interest than others, which is why we're here.
Okay. Well, is there anyone else that would like to have any comment on this issue here? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm William Miller. I represent Mr. Higdon, and we may want to give Mr. Scruggs answer some of the questions to eradicate some of what I would consider material misrepresentations made in the appeals. I'll address some of those things right now with your permission. I think Mr. Calmer has done a substantial amount of work looking into the background of this, and we would concur that he is absolutely correct on his research and his findings, other than on one aspect. We went in there and looked at the zoning ordinance, and to file an appeal, there are certain strict standards that you've got to meet for filing an appeal. As Marcus said, the zoning issue is a moot issue. It's unappealable. They meet all the standards except for the small variances. Under section 9.19 appeals of the Jackson County zoning ordinance, the process for an appeal is described. When you go into section 9.19.02, appeals from a decision of the Planning Commission, there's certain criteria in there that are involved. I'm not going to go into them in any detail, but paragraph A talks about the parameters that have to be included. Got 3 various criteria in there. Number 3 being a brief statement of each particular error which the appellant contends was committed by the Planning Commission. No error will be considered by the Board of Supervisors which has not been distinctly set out in the notice unless manifest injustice may occur otherwise. As you move down on that and you move into paragraph C of that, failure to comply in the event the requirements of section 9.19.02 and A and B are not complied with, it is grounds for dismissal of the appeal. In the instant appeal, there were 2 criteria that the appellants could have raised. One fell under the zoning issue. They don't want the subdivision. It's zoned correctly. Mr. Higdon meets all of the requirements of the zoning. So that one's unappealable, as Mr. Calmer stated and Marcus stated. The second one is they could have appealed the variances. However, if you look at their appeal, it is conspicuously devoid of any objection to the variances. They, as today, they objected to Indian burial mounds, wetlands, various things that are really not applicable to this project. I'll address a couple of these and I'll sit down. I appreciate your time. Got 14 owners on the appeal, 20 owners, something like that, not the first signature. I would argue as a matter of law, a matter of evidence, Mr. Calmer can probably concur, or hope he will, it is legally an insufficient appeal. Clearly they did not meet the particularity standards for the appeal. They didn't object to the variances, which were Those were the only objections they could raise. It's due to be dismissed because it didn't timely meet the standards. Notice, as they stated, is not required for this action. If you read the subregs, you read the zoning ordinance, it's not required. We'll address the covenant precluding lots less than 3 acre size. If you go down there, as Mr. Scruggs' very detailed plan shows, and he can show you how what's actually being proposed in here is not what's being misrepresented. There's no necessity for a core appeal on the 7 lots in the existing house up there. It's a 20-foot elevation and it's sandy. These appellants talk out of both sides of their mouth. They claim that Higdon is destroying trees. He's hired a landscape architect to make sure that they preserve the trees. They requested a narrow road so they didn't injure any of the oak trees. Oak trees grow in sandy soils. Sandy soils are not wetland soils. There's no necessity for a Corps of Engineers 404 permit because there's nothing out there that constitutes a wetland. After Hurricane Katrina, they didn't even have puddles because it's so sandy out there. There's no Indian burial mound. There's a couple of old graves in there. There's a couple of graves out there.
From 1800s.
Would you
I
please,
did not speak when you spoke. You're done. I'm talking.
please be recognized before you speak?
As to the mounds, that area is in the common area. It's not going to be disturbed by a lot. As I stated, Mr. Higgins hired a landscape architect to make sure there's no injury to any trees and he conserves everything. There's a statement made that the property is highly leveraged and Mr. Higdon needs the money. I'm aware of some of Mr. Higdon's holdings. My understanding is that the leverage on this property is well less than 25% loan to value and may be substantially less than that. I think, and knowing some of Mr. Higdon's holdings, which I can't divulge, Mr. Higdon doesn't have a lot of debt. Mr. Higdon doesn't have business issues that are pushing this. Mr. Higdon's developing this because it's a good fit for the county, putting a bunch of very substantial, very high-end lots over there to enhance the area. It enhances the tax roll substantially. As to any bulkhead, pier, anything else that's been installed in the past, it's been installed long past the statute of limitations, so if there were an error on it, it's no longer subject to any jurisdiction. Mr. Higdon tries to do things to the highest standard and has got a tremendous amount of respect for the board. He's got an open ear to provide anything that the board could reasonably request. But there's something about this R1 zoning district that's currently there. Mr. Higdon could come in here and cut these lots down and develop this within the zoning criteria, clear cut all of the trees, and put 80 by 120 foot lots or something along those lines, just under 10,000 square feet, and it's a by right issue. He's not doing that. He's creating lots that are all in excess of an acre. Within the zoning requirement, it says that no farm animals or fowl are allowed in residential district except on parcels of 1 acre or more. So Mr. Higdon could, if he wanted, put a chicken farm out there. He could grow hogs out there. He could grow goats out there. That's within his right. What Mr. Higdon's doing is putting a project in there in Jackson County that probably is incomparable. It's a really, really, really nice project. And it fully complies with all the zoning regs, and the appellants in their haste failed to object to the things they could object to. The time's run, and they no longer have a legally valid appeal. Thank you so much for your time. We thank Mr. Calmer for his very, very exhaustive work. Mr. Ketchot as well. I don't think, I would agree with Mr. Calmer that the board does not have anything to vote on today, not because of anything pushed down the road, but because the appellants failed to meet the required standard, the strict standard that's in section 19 of the zoning ordinance. And so because of that, I think their time's elapsed and they've delayed Mr. Higdon wrongfully for 60 days on this project. Thank you very, very much for your time, and I appreciate your time to let us talk. Any questions, anything?
I'm good. Questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone else like to have a comment?
Hey, Marcus, didn't you tell me a couple, 3 weeks ago, he pulled a permit for something out there? What'd he pull a permit for?
I think it was to redo a existing house and add a little addition to it.
Okay, is that the old stucco house?
I think so. Yeah.
Mr. Furr, aren't you the architect on that?
Yes.
All right. Can you come up here now? I'm just trying to answer some of their questions.
Sure. Henry Furr, architect, Ocean Springs. Mr. Higdon engaged me to work with him on the level house. Basically, doing a little research on it. We did went and did existing plans, checking it out. It's interesting history of the property. It was originally a clubhouse. It wasn't actually a house, and was kind of used that way. And so over time, it was converted into a regular single family residence. And we've looked at the house and worked with him on ways to preserve the house and the character of the house, and we're not again, Mr. Higdon, as he's known to do, is not really sparing any expense to do a good job with this. This house never really had it was built pre-air conditioning. It was built when they just barely were, coming out with electricity. So we're going back and very carefully figuring out how we're going to put in, make this air conditioning work, how we're going to, make this a house that is livable and useful to people today, and doing it in a very sympathetic manner that retains the character of the house and keeps all of those things that, it has some really, really cool heavy timber trusses, and the roof is built with purlins, and it's just a little bit different construction than maybe we're normally used to, but those are things that we're preserving and keeping, and so I think he's done a really good job with it. I've been working with him on around the house, preserving, locating and preserving the camellias and the oak trees, and we did do a little bit of taking out a bunch of water oaks and small trees that have grown up because the house hadn't been really used in a long time. So kind of getting it cleaned up, but also again preserving all of those oak trees. That is one of the beautiful things about Point Shane, is that there are a lot of beautiful oak trees, and that's what gives it a part of its character, and that's part of why he wanted to do the narrower roads, is because the little driveway our road goes between some of these oak trees, and so this is all things that he's trying to preserve the character of the house, the character of the neighborhood. And I know there are neighbors here. I know some of them. Change is always hard, but I think he is embracing the idea of these are large estate-sized lots that are in keeping with the neighborhood, and he is wanting to do nice homes that, again, would be in keeping with the neighborhood. And he has asked me and Quint Moran to work with him on any houses that get built. We will be the ones working on those, so to keep that character.
So that existing house that he just got the permit for,
yeah,
is there any kind of, one of their questions was, and I didn't even know this, is there any kind of historical requirements for redoing that house that you know of?
There are Secretary of State standards that you can go to. Typically, it is something that
it's something you would go to on, it's a commercial property. They have these standards that you work to. Now, you know, given that we are doing a very sympathetic additions to the house where we're maintaining all of the existing house and the character of those spaces, and that's part of those. Those are guidelines. They are not requirements. But it is something that he wants to do. He wants to keep the character of the house. He wants to keep it so that it's still a recognizable, this is that old house. This is that old clubhouse. And, you know, so those are things that we are, you know, looking at those guidelines and considering. Any other questions?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Taylor, may I address Mr. Bosar's question for a second?
Sure.
Mr. Higdon, in typical form and fashion, Mr. Bosarge, procured the permits like he should, and he also hired an architect, a design professional, who is very competent in analyzing the historical aspect and the standards and requirements, and preparing a set of plans based on those requirements, so that anybody involved in the process can reasonably rely on those plans and permits, and Mr. Higgins has taken all the steps necessary to meet those standards. So there should be no question with the engagement of one of the most reputable local architects out there. Thank you, sir.
I've seen Mr. Furr's plans before. They are very detailed, so yeah.
They are, and that's what Mr. Higgins should do to meet the highest standard in the game. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And good morning, gentlemen. My name is Donovan Scruggs. I'm also representing Mr. Higdon. I'll be as brief as possible on this particular matter. I know we're trying to get out of here. I do want to back up what Henry said with respect to the historical preservation rules. Secretary of Interior lays out guidelines. Those guidelines are usually enforced by a local historic preservation committee. Jackson County does not have a local historic preservation committee. So therefore, there really is no real reason to look at those standards unless we are looking for tax credits from the federal government and from the state government, or unless we are applying for grant dollars or some other federal type subsidies. We're not asking for any of that. So there really is no authority for Jackson or anybody else to look at the historical nature of this. Now that said, Henry is going to develop this property in a manner that is consistent, you know, with those guidelines. The same thing about trees. Y'all do not have, or Jackson County does not have, a tree preservation ordinance. One of the very first conversations I had with Mr. Higdon was we want to make sure we save these live oaks. That's what he wants to do. So there's been a ton of talking out of both sides of your mouth, as Mr. Miller indicated, or Mr. Mitchell indicated, that we are trying to save the trees. We're trying to save the trees through these variants we're asking for. Now, we did ask for a sketch plat, which is not typically normal process here in Jackson County. The reason we did it is because we knew we had a couple of variances that were associated with this application, and we wanted some clarification on the front end that if we go forward with the development of this, we don't get to preliminary plat or some other later stage in the ballgame and find out that these variances were not acceptable. We did meet with the fire inspector, the fire marshal out on site. He thought it was a great project. He saw no issue with our request. I believe Mr. O'Neill, road manager, has no problem with our request. And then real briefly, I want to indicate that if you look at the property and the area out there, adjacent to this property, there's approximately 3 lots that are less than an acre in size. Now, if you listen to what the opponent said, every lot out there is 3 to 5 acres in size and everything's really big. That's not the case. There are 3 properties that are adjacent to this property that are less than an acre in size, and there's one that's less than 2 acres. This property is going to have 9 lots, 2 of which are going to be, I think, 2.5 to 3 acres in size. One that's going to be 1.5 acres in size, and another that's going to be 1 acre in size, all which exceed your zoning requirements. So that's why we're here today. You know, there's a property on here, Mr. Cumbus, that we're going to pull that is a little more typical to what I represent, and that is that individuals trying to get the most they can out of a piece of property. You know, trying to zone down and do less than what's being permitted by the zoning ordinance. In this particular case, the owner is building things that are much larger than what is required by the requirements. He could easily put 50 to 60 lots out there and do a typical R1 development. He's running water and sewer to the development at his own dime, at his own cost. So I think he's doing a lot better than what's being purported, by those in opposition. I'm happy to be part of this development, and I think it's going to be a very big asset to Jackson County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor, let me make a comment to the board. And let me say this and then ask Marcus a question. Variances for roadway specifications such as they are seeking do have to be approved by this board. The Planning Commission did recommend the variances to the road and the gate. Questions about whether or not the appeal to this board is specific enough. I understand what Mr. Miller's saying. I get it, I understand it, but that would be for a court to determine, not us. But let me ask Marcus, what on the sketch plat, was the variance request for the road width and for the gate specific enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if this board wanted to, I think you could deny the appeal as it relates to this variance. Now, whether or not it's actually been specifically stated enough to be a valid appeal, probably a close question. I mean, it's a lot of general language in the appeal. But if you wanted to deny the appeal, I think you could, as it relates to the road width of 20 feet and the request for a gate into this private subdivision. I don't think the rest of the appeal or even appealable issues before this particular board. It's still going to come back to this board on the preliminary plat stage. You would just have the variance for the 20-foot road and for the gate already approved. I think that would be an option for this board if you wanted to do that.
And I really don't think the road size or the gate is an issue with the residents. I think they're good with that. They just didn't want this subdivision to transpire. So I mean,
the only reason I'm kind of going through this is in the appeal, they're appealing the decision to approve the sketch plat.
Sketch plat.
Well, within the sketch plat is the 20-foot variance, or 20-foot road request variance, and the gate.
That's correct.
So conceivably, you could argue, well, it is included in the appeal, but we're not a bunch of judges up here making that determination. But I will tell you that if the 20-foot request and the gate was specific enough in the application and in the sketch that was given, the sketch that I saw was real small, it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
Then this board, I think, could deny the appeal as to that. And you could approve the variance as it relates to the roadway and as to the gate. I just don't think anything else is. I was saying maybe it would be better if we did it all at once, but if it's important to move forward, if the developer is looking for some certainty on whether this board agrees with a 20-foot private road and a gate, that's something that you could discuss and probably approve.
It has to come before the board again, for preliminary. I mean, we could take no action today since we approved it and we met our regulations by approving it. Me and my staff approved sketch plat. That's what's required by the regulations. We could take no action here, just the board say, go ahead and proceed with the next step. And then preliminary, you could approve the the gate and road variance. I know that's not what the attorneys want, but I really don't think the residents have a problem with the gate and the roadway. So I don't think that's going to be an issue at preliminary. And I think they understand now that everything else is allowed by right. So there's really nothing with this development that is appealable.
So I guess there's two choices. When it comes back as a preliminary plat, approve it all, or go ahead and approve the 20-foot private road variance and the gate.
I would opt, I think, for waiting until we get the preliminary. There possibly may not be an appeal, although there may. Had a good dry run of it today.
Well, Mr. Taylor, that's the only thing that they could appeal would be road size
Okay.
and the gate. So I really don't think that's an issue with the residents. If I lived out there, I'd want it to be a gated subdivision, and I sure wouldn't want to cut the trees down, so.
Well, would you want that approval today of those couple of items?
And that's up to the board.
It's up to the board.
Mr. Comer laid it out two ways for you. That's strictly up to the board.
Okay, board, what is your thought?
Improving the road and the gate.
Jimmy recommendation. That was Jimmy recommendation, let's table. Wait till you do it all at one time.
Yeah.
Do it all at once?
Yeah, do it all at once.
Do it all at once?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing it all at once.
Yeah.
And I do have something to make sure I'm understanding. The parts of this that could potentially be appealed would be the narrower road and gate. But as far as density goes, that's already okay.
That is allowed by right, correct.
And if we did, and they could be more dense if they wanted to, and that's allowed, and we couldn't stop that.
That is correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
understand.
yes, sir, that's correct. Much denser, and it would be allowed by right.
So I think the consensus was to take no action today. Tell me if I'm wrong.
And in taking no action, where does this leave the objectors and the owner? Can the owner go ahead and keep proceeding with this preliminary plat?
I think maybe vote to proceed with the next step. Maybe.
I don't know if that's necessary that we vote on that. I think just you continue your work with Mr. Miller and Mr. Furr and the others, and then proceed with a preliminary plat as you normally would. And I think if it's the consensus of this board to wait, then maybe we just have a motion that we take no action on the appeal at this time.
But that doesn't stop
No,
either side from doing what they need to do down the road.
No, sir, because based on the regulations, we can approve this, me and my staff can approve it, which we've done. So we can go ahead and proceed with the preliminary plat
Okay.
if you take no action.
So what happens to their appeal? It goes to the preliminary plat?
No, I think the appeal just, it just basically dies right now, if you take no action on it.
Okay. I'll make a motion to take no action until the preliminary.
We need to include in that this.
Got a motion by Mr. Beausarge. Do we have a second?
I think so.
I'll second.
Within his motion.
Seconded by Mr. Cumbest. We all know what we're doing. Is there any questions?
Mr. Taylor, Mr. Beausarge, would you amend your motion to include in the minutes
what they
the
brought?
material
Yeah.
that was provided by the
Yeah,
appeal?
I'll amend my motion to include the material that was provided by the objectors.
Okay. We do not have to second and vote on that, do we?
Well, I think it'd be part of the motion just
It's
to,
part of the motion.
Okay.
to
Okay,
take
so
no action.
the motion has been revised and seconded. Okay, is there any discussion? Let's do a count. Mr. Cumbest, how do you vote? Mr. Morris? I vote aye. Mr. Ross? Mr. Beausarge?
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor, the next appeal, RZON-04-2023-0057, the Billy Anderson Homes Construction Zone Change. I have a letter from the developer withdrawing their request for this development, so there's no need for an appeal.
If, Mr. Taylor, if we could have that motion put in the minutes and a motion to dismiss that appeal based on the withdrawal letter that.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Cumbus, seconded by Mr. Bossarge. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, like motion.
That way.
Yes. Okay.
Thank y'all.
Motion carries. Thank everyone very much for being patient, and we may see y'all in the future. Thank y'all.
Mr. Taylor, one more matter of business.
Sure.
Mr. Ketchot is about as objective as anyone we've dealt with here professional. Mr. Higdon has been impeded from moving forward with a preliminary plat application despite being ready to do so. He submitted the preliminary plat application to the planning staff, but they were unable to formally accept it. We would like for the board, based on the delay of the appeal, for the board to go ahead and direct planning staff, Mr. Ketchot, to go ahead and accept that retroactively so that it can be on the next agenda when we get everything resolved.
We can handle that. We'll take care of that.
Okay, I didn't want to leave you hanging on it. Thank you, sir. He's been most objective, most professional. We don't want to get him in trouble for our thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, as I look at our agenda, I think we've covered everything. We have not covered the budget work session, item number 17, so shall we move into
Can we recess for just 5 minutes?
5-minute recess, and then we'll have a budget work session.